here during this whole entire conversation. I think what was it like 7 or 8 p.m. and you guys still going on? Are you guys drinking cafe or something to keep awake?
We're trying to fix the world, Tyler. We're trying to fix the world.
Okay.
I actually fell asleep. I feel ashamed.
Okay, so I'll try to answer the question again, and basically my personal style perspective is not necessarily, of course, from an African point of view or like a middle, like any kind of part of the country's world point of view. It's like a American point of view, right? So, one of my famous actors, is actually Johnny Depp. He played in like a lot of movies that I grew up watching. He played, Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. His first ever movie was in The Nightmare on Elm Street. He also played Edward Scissorhands. He had so many different unique roles when he, of course, was playing as an actor. Now, one of the biggest trials of recent memory is something that happened with his now ex wife, Amber Heard. And basically, it was the most crazy thing that possibly could imagine to, Johnny Depp. Because, first of all, I heard at some point she basically took a dump on his bed. That's like one thing. And then the second thing is the type of abuse that Johnny Depp had to face when he was then with his ex wife. And she considered herself to be a feminist. And so when it came down to the whole entire trial and process to see, is Johnny Depp actually innocent or not? There were many people that were basically cheering on for Amber and saying, well, you see, Amber is actually innocent and Johnny is actually guilty. And Johnny Depp, because of the actions of like these accusations that were laying towards him, he was basically blacklisted from Hollywood and could not get any type of money or productions whatsoever. I think he was supposed to be in the Harry Potter movie, and they basically rejected him. I believe it was the Animaniacs TV show reboot that came on streaming platforms that also made fun of Johnny Depp too. And so by the time that Johnny Depp won, basically it took, even though he won the whole entire case about the whole entire accusations against him, he still cannot find any kind of job, any type of work whatsoever because of these kind of accusations. And I guess in the West, I don't understand how is it that basically all of these Western feminists, they say, well, you see, you need to believe all women, but when it comes down to false accusations against a man, how they would not do the same sort of thing for someone like him and just believe Amber instead of Johnny Depp. That's like, I guess, the first thing that comes to my mind on this particular issue. Also, another thing that's also really saddened to me is something that is known as basically the Duluth model in the United States, where it basically assumes that men are automatically the perpetrators of, domestic abuse and stuff like that, and they're assumed guilty until proven innocent. And unfortunately, it has been because of like a lot of Western feminists that they basically push that particular law in the United States right there. And I guess my final example on the top of my head, of course, more recently I've been getting into TikTok. I see like a lot of people going on TikTok. I think the vast majority of young people who are Gen Zers are now on TikTok and they get their information directly from TikToks. I have seen nothing but a series of feminists since October the 7th basically trying to say that the Quran is progressive and this and that, and it does not necessarily make any sort of sense to me. Why would they embrace such ideas? And so I guess when you ask like why do men struggle with feminism, I can only speak for myself. It's because I see such actions like Amber and Johnny Depp, because I see such actions on TikTok, because I see such actions of the Duluth model, right? That's why I continue to struggle to support it.
Can I respond to
Well,
that
I
if y'all don't
mean,
mind?
um, so feminism is not there for men to support, you know? So I'm really glad to hear that you're struggling in supporting it. It's not a movement for men to support. It's not a movement for men to feel comfortable with. And I think that
So,
number one, in terms of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation, it's a very convoluted series of events. And even if you believe that Amber Heard abused Johnny Depp in some way, right? What we're doing here is using the very, very few false accusations to paint an entire movement as sus. You know, it's giving, oh, well, because one person accused a man of rape, that means that rape accusers are all liars. But the statistics that come from the FBI, right, show that these false accusations are few and far between. And an overwhelming 94% of the time, they are actually true, right? So if you're choosing to use that one example, right, it's because you're choosing to believe what makes you more comfortable rather than the representative reality, right? For every Amber Heard there was, how many women were actually abused by men? For you to come on here and say, well, I have a problem supporting feminism and their fight to liberate those women. I think feminism is doing its job when men feel uncomfortable.
Can I
I
really?
think feminism, I think feminism was never meant for men to give it permission to exist. Um, then the domestic violence statistics, I mean, we can speak on this all day until we're blue in the face. We are not going to pretend that women are just as violent as men. The statistics don't bear that out. The data doesn't bear that out. Even though there are men who are victims of domestic violence, it pales in comparison to women. And women are allowed to center themselves. Women are allowed to center their own experiences. I know, shocker. In a patriarchal world where everyone gives a damn more about how a man gets his balls tickled, right? Than women standing up to end a problem that is affecting them. We dare to do that. And finally, listen, these religious nut jobs that will use the Bible or the Quran to say that something is feminism or something is not feminism, they will be left behind. Okay? Feminists do not agree that religion can empower women. And these books do not show that evidence. So I think, I mean, if I, go out there tomorrow and call myself a sports journalist because I like watching basketball, right? Doesn't make me a sports journalist. Okay? So people who are chugging Bible verses, thumping the Quran, just because they say they're feminists doesn't actually make them feminists. Because I believe that supporting things that limit women's choices and holding them back, right, is antithetical to feminism. And I think, stop Black femicide, you wanted to respond really quickly before we go to Ilona.
Yes. So when it comes to the West, specifically the U.S., um, most people, I'm gonna say, including most men, do not know about coverture laws. Coverture laws, as I've said when I spoke before, are laws in America that pretty much made women the proper, or females to include girls and women, the property either of the men in their family or the men that they married. And because of the laws concerning property, which also extend to slavery back in the 1800s, a man could do whatever he wanted to with his property, which if you felt like your property was needing of some type of discipline or some type of maintenance, quote unquote, yeah, you were allowed to maintenance your property however you saw fit. And many women were actually the victims of abuse and assault because they were seen as a man's property. That's why if you look in the jumbotron with some of the sources I provided, along with links and screenshots, you'll see that things like marital rape and domestic violence were not explicitly outlawed until the late 1980s, early 1990s, because those are things that were going on with their marriages. And a lot of times there was nothing that women could do about them unless there was explicit damage or explicit injuries sustained as a result. I used to work in the prison system. I've talked to several inmates that were alive and adults back in the 80s and early 90s that told me that if there was an issue that somebody had with a woman and they hit the woman in the mouth, and somehow the police got called out, as long as she wasn't bleeding too bad or she wasn't unconscious or had any broken bones, the police would come out there, look and make sure everything was all right, and turn around and leave, because that's how that was back then. A man could hit his woman or his wife in the mouth or in the face or discipline her however he saw fit. And it would be seen as okay because that was his property, and women were seen as inferior, almost to the extent of children. That's why men had the majority of the responsibilities when it comes to running society, running the home, and other such things. So when we talk about, oh, well, the West this and Amber Heard this and everything, that has only been the narrative in the last 30, maybe 40 years tops in America. Go back before that and you will see there is a disproportionate amount of attention and a disproportionate amount of support for men that would have been in those types of situations, socially speaking and legally speaking, because there was no real legislation that was sure to hold men to the fire or was sure to hold men accountable for that type of thing that they did to women. Even if you go back 60 some odd years, whenever there was a divorce, the men were the ones that were most likely to have the children because the men were the head of households. They're the ones that had jobs, they had bank accounts, they had access to all these other resources that women could not get until they either were in proximity to a man, such as through marriage, or in proximity to a man in their family, with like the patriarch, like a brother or uncle or a father or something like that. So all these things that modern men be complaining about and saying, oh, well, women did this, that's only been the past 30 years. Go back a good 100, 200 fucking years in this country, and you'll see how fucked up shit really was for women in this country. And the same shit that y'all complain about now, you have other men to fucking thank for. Literally. All the things that we complain about, oh, well, women are doing this or women are doing that. Oh, well, women have rights now. They didn't have fucking rights 100 fucking years ago. Not the type of shit that we complain about now. So if you want to do the mathematics and try to keep a little bit of balance, 300 to 400 years in America, give or take a couple of centuries, of men having nothing, and men having the say so in fucking America over the women, and women having, say, the past 60 or 70 years. That's probably being a little generous. Of being having some type of autonomy outside of being in proximity to men and being able to have a job, being able to own a home, being able to have a family, being able to have a bank account. 400 or 500 years compared to 70, that ain't shit. And yet you see all these fucking men whining in their fucking feelings because women don't want to do shit the way that the shit used to fucking be. And now we're seeing how shit was really when the shit was unfair against them. And anytime that women have actually had, rights or whatever given to them, those are simply concessions. And anytime we give them those legal concessions to make them say, okay, well, here, be satisfied with this. And then they say, no, we want more than this or we deserve more than this. Motherfuckers want to get mad and get in their feelings because, oh, well, we gave you this. What's the problem with this? Because they're not accepting a little bit of crumbs of respect and autonomy that we give them. It's literally no different from the shit that black people go through with fucking white people in America. Literally, they gave us some rights. We marched and we protested for fucking rights. And they say, okay, well, now we give you this, be satisfied. And they say, no, we still have these issues. It's not fixing the fucking problem. These are only treatments. It's not the actual fucking solution or the cure. And then we want more. And then they say, well, we just gave you this. Why are you so fucking ungrateful? And that's how a lot of fucking men sound like when it comes to feminism in America and understanding the rights that women actually require to be any type of actual equality.
Can I
Like, thank
can
you.
I can
Also,
I can
thank
I
you for pointing that out.
yeah,
One,
can
one
I
second,
consider something
Tyler, and I'll let you
one minute?
respond. 1 second, I'll let you respond. Thank you for pointing that out, right? Because again, Black men really do not understand this argument until it comes to race, right? Now, imagine if we sat here and said that because the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement were scamming and were self-interested, that I just don't see why we should support civil rights. I think that we were perfectly happy when Black men were in chains and hanging from trees. Okay? That is the equivalent to what you just did with Amber Heard, right? And I also think that Americans do not have credibility on this issue because America, who that is supposed to be such a bastion of women's rights, we still have to fight to get the Defense of Women Act funding renewed. It is not in perpetuity. like tax cuts are. And May 2022, this country was sent back 50 years when they decided to overturn Roe v. Wade. And as we speak, little girls are getting pregnant, and then their futures are held for ransom in the land of the red, white, and blue that is supposed to be, feminism done did its thing. But now we are right back in the 70s, fighting for the right to family plan, contraception, abortion access. These are things that feminists fought for. These are things that feminists will have to fight for again. And these are things that we will lose if feminists do not keep their eye on the ball. So I think that Americans don't have credibility on this issue. America has found its way. They are emulating third world countries. In Nigeria, only 12% of the women there are using modern contraception because God said so. And they have their family planning is very poor. They have no control over their wombs and their uteruses. And they have very limited abortion access. And I think that America choosing to emulate that when we are supposed to be progressing as a society means that Americans really just do not have any credibility in saying that feminism isn't needed in 2024. But Tyler, you are allowed to respond, and then we are going to go to Ilona.
Okay, first and foremost, I do acknowledge that yes, in the past, females did in fact face issues. I'm not negating that point. I'm just trying to make the argumentation, and I guess maybe it's my personal intentions that two wrongs don't necessarily make a right. That there should be like some sort of balance between, I guess, the extremes of mistreatment of women and also basically the mistreatment of men. That's like one thing. And also, in regards to the Black Lives Matter comment, I think it's not necessarily that people don't support civil rights because they don't support Black Lives Matter. I think what you were mentioning before was the corruption of the organization, and that's why people take issue with it. Because I think it was more recently, they had been recently supporting, like, a lot of things that were pretty questionable. Like they basically had like a lot of money directly from like these companies, and basically it was like Nike and these other kind of companies. And what happened was that they used a lot of that money. Some of the founders used that money to buy mansions. And so I don't think it's not necessarily a question of like not supporting black rights. It's a question of corruption. I think that's the issue that people like me and some other people have problems with. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, I do in fact agree that unfortunately what happened with the case of abortion is terrible. However, let's use hindsight though. Like, yes, there are problems that we need to fix. There's no question about that. That being said, when you compare the American life in general in comparison to every other part in the world, I would think that women, objectively speaking, would have it better in comparison to those other countries. Yes, let's fix abortion laws, let's fix all these other things, but relatively speaking, we have it so much better here. So much better.